Mercy is for the weak. Good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It is me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. How you doing? Uh, Two games I want to talk about right now for a few minutes here. Duke hosting Notre Dame, Texas hosting Kansas. What's one of the universal truths of college football? Something that almost every college football fan likes, right? A great underdog story. This is the second year in a row Kansas and Duke are starting off 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. I can't remember how far past 4-0 each of these teams got last year because you remember they actually played last year. I think it might have been this week when they were both 4-0 and then they played each other. Anyway, uh, no one hates, well, I was about to say nobody hates Duke or Kansas. A lot of people hate Duke or Kansas for basketball reasons, but as far as football goes, I don't know. I enjoy a good underdog story in college football. Whoever it is, anybody that sort of comes from nowhere, or some of these programs that have just been kind of beaten down for decades in football, I don't mind it. I enjoy it when they have a good year, a couple of good years, a good run, whatever the case. I do find myself rooting. And you know what? I think that's true for just American culture in general, sort of rooting for the underdog type of deal. So let's talk about these two games here because they're both underdogs this week, even though they're undefeated. Duke at home is a 5.5 to 6 point underdog, depending on where you look, to Notre Dame. Texas is about a 16 to a 17 point favorite at home, hosting Kansas. So I guess just the general overarching question here: can either of these underdogs pull off the upset, the outright upset, and actually win the game? Forget the point spreads for a second. Can Duke pull it off at home against Notre Dame? Can Kansas go on the road and beat Texas? Well, both could happen. I mean, neither one of these, if Duke were to beat Notre Dame or Kansas were to beat Texas, neither one of those two things would be the most shocking upsets we've seen in college football over the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen way more massive upsets than that. But if I had to pick one or the other, I think Duke's probably got a better chance of pulling off the upset here than Kansas for two, I guess, obvious reasons. Number one, they're at home, whereas Kansas is on the road. And number two, they're just a much less significant underdog. They're only a 5 to a 6 point underdog in this game, whereas Kansas, you're looking at almost three scores, 16 to 17 points there as an underdog. Let's start with the Duke and the Notre Dame game. Things do actually set up here for Duke to pull off what would be probably their biggest home win in school football history. The week one game was huge, hosting Clemson. I mean, that was massive. This is on a scale so far beyond that, it's hard to measure. College game day is going to be there at Duke. Just let that sink in. College game day, the football version of college game day, is going to be at Duke for a Duke Notre Dame game. And Duke is the team that's undefeated, not Notre Dame. Notre Dame is coming off of a just heartbreaking, emotional, literal last-second loss last week at home to a pretty good Ohio State team. How do they rebound from that? Can they get up a second week in a row for a big game? And how big of a game is this for Notre Dame? Because for Duke, this is the Super Bowl, basically. I mean, this would be a chance for Duke to pull off, like I said, one of their biggest wins in football program history, at least in recent memory. Is Notre Dame going to be able to bounce back from the emotional high that they had to get to last week to play that game, the emotional low of losing literally on the last second, and then turn right back around and have to prepare for what's a pretty good Duke team, and you got to travel and play them there? And look, Duke's stadium is not one of these massive SEC or Big Ten stadiums. But however loud that stadium can possibly be, that's how loud it will be. I think this will be a crazy environment. at Duke. I'm actually looking forward to College Game Day too. I like when College Game Day gets a chance to go to some places that they don't normally get to go. Now, don't get me wrong. I love seeing College Game Day in some of the traditional backdrops, the Notre Dame Cathedral or the Football Jesus thing in the background when they go there, or they go to Ohio State a lot, or some of the SEC schools that they go to a lot, or what. I enjoy that too, but I do like it, and I think it's great that when given the opportunity, College Game Day will go to one of these sort of out of the way places that typically they don't go. And in this case, Duke. It's going to be a crazy environment. Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman had obviously his worst game of the season last week against Ohio State, but admittedly against a pretty good defense. I expect him to bounce back this week. This is another situation where I'm looking to, an interesting quarterback matchup here. Last week, of course, you had Sam Hartman, kind of grizzled veteran, been around forever, transfers from Wake Forest to Notre Dame, and sort of, first month of the season, everything's going great. Versus Kyle McCord at Ohio State, first-year starter, making only his fourth start, first major road test. How would he respond? Well, we figured out how he would respond with that 90-something yard touchdown drive in the final minute of the game. And then this week, you've got that same Sam Hartman. How does he rebound from that loss last week? On the road against one of the most exciting quarterbacks to watch in all of college football, Riley Leonard. If you remember the Clemson game, he really hurt Clemson in that game with both his arms and his legs. He can run. He can pick up first downs. He's not Cam Newton. He's not even Tim Tebow. He's not even Anthony Richardson or Jalen Milroe. Some of these like super athletic sort of check every box at a combine type of players. But man, if you need 5 yards, doesn't it feel like Riley Leonard's going to get you 6 every time he takes off running? It does. This is going to be a big test for Duke on the lines of scrimmage, too. Notre Dame, better. Notre Dame is just better, really, all around, talent-wise. I mean, this is not a shock if you paid any attention to recruiting at all. Notre Dame just got a more talented roster. But I do think this is a dangerous situation here for Notre Dame. You're walking into a literal hornet's nest here in Duke. They're on top of the world. You're coming off of a heartbreaking loss. I think this is a dangerous spot for Notre Dame. And, of course, they're in do-or-die mode, basically. Now, not everyone agrees with me, and you don't have to. And whether the playoff committee feels this way or not, maybe we'll find out this year, maybe we won't. I don't ever think a one-loss Notre Dame should get in a playoff. I think they make a choice every offseason to, no matter what, we're not playing a 13th game, no matter what. I think because of that, they need to go 12-0 to get in the playoffs. But that being said, if there was a year where a one-loss Notre Dame was going to get in, this would probably be it. Now, they've lost their first true test of the season against Ohio State. They've got Duke. They've still got to play Southern Cal. They've still got to play Clemson and a handful of other potentially dangerous ACC teams. So even if Notre Dame gets past Duke, I don't think it's clear sailing the rest of the way to 11-1. I think Notre Dame's likely to finish. I actually think Notre Dame's more likely to finish 9-3 at this point than they are 11-1. But nevertheless, that chance is still there. So, it's almost playoff mode mentality for Notre Dame right now. You have to win every other game if you want to have any chance of getting into the playoffs. If you're Notre Dame, that starts this week on the road at Duke. I'm very excited about this game. I'm going to pick Duke to cover the spread. It's just boring to pick the favorites every time. And when we get to we're going to talk, Kansas at Texas. I think Texas wins, covers. I actually don't think this game is going to be particularly close. And that's disappointing because everything I said about Duke and the underdog mentality and story and an exciting quarterback, they've got the, Jalen Daniels. All of that applies to Kansas. Problem is they're going on the road. They're going to play Texas. You do have the look-ahead factor for Texas, I guess, where maybe you catch them looking ahead to next week's game, which is Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout. I just think Texas is too good of a team. I think Texas handles business and covers against Kansas. But let's be real, Texas and Notre Dame, there's a lot of Texas fans and there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. And then there's a lot of people that hate Texas and a lot of people that hate Notre Dame. So you'll have a lot of people pulling for both Duke and Kansas this week. But I think Quinn Ewers, those wide receivers at Texas, again, the lines of scrimmage are going to be a huge mismatch for the underdog in the Texas-Kansas game as well. I think Kansas will probably get pushed around. And where you really start to see that kind of thing show up a lot of time in these types of matchups is in the second half, right? When the less talented, smaller, less deep team that's not able to rotate players in and out, the second half, right? They start to tire out. You start to see them, getting pushed backwards. So we'll keep an eye on that with both of these situations. Notre Dame on the road at Duke, Kansas on the road at Texas. But two good stories again with Texas and with Duke and Kansas. And look, neither one of these teams, season is over if they lose this game. Now they'll be featured on the Sunday your season is over video because we talk about everybody that loses. But Duke in particular, this isn't even a conference game. Notre Dame's still doing the 1 foot in, 1 foot out deal when it comes to the ACC. So Duke could lose this game by 100 points. This doesn't affect Duke's ability to make the ACC title game or win the ACC, not one bit, right? Clemson's still going to be 3 games behind Duke, even if Duke loses by 100. Let's not get started on the Taters. Well, they down bad. Clemson down bad. Anyway, 2 interesting games. I guess for my picks, I'm going to take Texas to win and cover. I'm going to take Duke to keep it close, but I think Notre Dame probably wins a close one. Have a good morning.